But he also brought up a subject that I find fascinating, which is about these players that ask us to reevaluate what we're watching in sports. And I would define them as blank check players. And that's where I want to kick off this conversation as we enter hour number 2 here on Saturdays on The Game. And I'm not sure how many there are in the Bay Area. And I've kind of threw it out. Our YouTube chat, powered by First NorCal Credit Union, was throwing in some really nice suggestions. I honestly, I think the only blank check player in the Bay Area right now is Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, Estimated Eyes, one of our loyal listeners and P1 YouTubers, threw out a lot of names around sports, right? We threw out Shohei, Judge, Jokic might be one, Giannis, Mahomes. These are the suggestions. But an interesting name came up. Because if I asked you on the San Francisco 49ers, who is the blank check player for them? If there is one, who would it be? For the San Francisco 49ers. They just paid Brandon Ayuk 4 years, $120 million. They gave out a ton of money to Christian McCaffrey in guarantees this offseason. They paid Bosa what he wanted last year, Deebo the year before. They've committed $350 million in cash towards this season.
If I had to pick one.
If you had to pick one, who would it be?
George Kittle.
Wow. George Kittle.
Yeah.
How come?
Well, first of all, it's his value as a tight end. I think he's surpassed Kelsey for being the best in the NFL right now. I think that, and Kelsey is very good in the postseason, but during the regular season, I think that when healthy, George Kittle is physically where this all begins, right? In terms of being a catching tight end, not only a guy who receives the ball, but being able to get in those seams downfield, running after the catch, blocking, all those things that we know George Kittle to be one of the greatest to ever do it. But if I had to pick the reason why he's the blank check guy, it's because he is the leader of that team, in my estimation, that I think that he is the personality on that team, that you remove George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers and they cease to be, in terms of what our perception of them currently as being the Super Bowl contender. So George Kittle is the guy.
No, I think that sort of, I don't know, like innate quality of leadership, being the face of a franchise, being a representative, in addition to just a high-class athlete, that is to me what being a blank check player is. I personally don't think that Kittle's that guy. I don't think the Niners have one, to be honest.
Well, I thought the game was we had to pick one.
Well, if I have to pick one, yeah, you got me there. If I have to pick one, it's the guy that is holding out right now. It's Trent Williams. If I have to pay a single player on the 49ers whatever they want, it's Trent Williams. It's not the quarterback. It's not Nick Bosa. It's not Christian McCaffrey. It's not Fred Warner. It's Trent Williams.
But blank check. So if we're to go by pure definition, I think there's a number, there's a ceiling on how much. I give him as much money as he wants. But in terms of blank check, again, that value, I'd argue George Kittle for the reasons I just stated, for what it is that he means in terms of the overall persona of that team. Like, I don't know, say, look at Jalen Moore is not as good as Trent Williams. I think you're looking at this exclusively from wins and losses and an impact between the lines. But blank check to me, well, I would write him the biggest check, but blank check sort of goes into a whole nother sort of stratosphere.
You would write the biggest check for the team to George Kittle.
No, I would write the biggest check. Maybe I'm contradicting myself. If Trent Williams wants to be the highest paid at his position, I'd write him the biggest check in the history of left tackles.
I think
blank check, meaning in terms of value, I think George Kittle has more value to that football team at the end of the day than Trent Williams.
I think with what Trent just stabilizes on that team, it's him for me. And statistically, they are just so much better when he's on the field. And that's why I find it interesting that he's the one guy that's still not under lock and key. And I think it's because he has asked, not for a blank check, but for a boatload of money. And the reports are out there that the Niners and he are not close. I still think there's plenty of time for them to figure this out. I'm not too concerned about it, to be honest. I still think he'll be there week 1 against the Jets. But I think it is because he is a blank check player. He has a number in mind. The Niners maybe don't want to come near it. I'm not too sure. If Trent Williams asked for $30 million, would you pay him? Because I would.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I can't do, I said at the top of the show.
It's not our money, but.
Exactly. I cannot. I have no room. I have no bandwidth to get into contract talk after what it is that we just did with Brandon Ayuk. I can't even begin to think about how much money, and the two sides are not even close. I'm so done with it. Just sign the dude. And when you do, we can talk about it. You can talk to the listeners about numbers and how far apart the two sides are. I'm exhausted.
Well, no, but this is the exercise. Just if you were to present a player with a blank check, who would that be? For Dan Devone, it's George Kittle. For me, it's Trent Williams. Right now, I would not present. I know that they restructured his contract and gave him more money and made him the highest paid player in addition to what he was already making in his position. If Christian McCaffrey asked for a blank check, I would not give it to him.
Yeah.
Because of the position that he plays.
Exactly.
If Brandon Ayuk asked for a blank check, I would not give it to him. If Brock Purdy right now asked for a blank check, I would not give it to him. The only player on the Niners that I would give a blank check to and say, write what you want, and I will hand you that dough, is Trent Williams. Because I think he is that important to where this season is supposed to go.
When we talk about checks, blank or otherwise, you know what I find sort of ironic in all of this? Now, I know there's a salary cap involved, so it's not necessarily apples and apples, but how we peruse through these contracts, and Brandon Ayuk, perfect example, and we know every dollar amount and where it's allocated and the salary cap hit and how much is deferred and how much is guaranteed and the APY, and all of his money is out there for public consumption. And there are a lot of people that feel as though, we had this conversation in the first hour. Who won? Who lost? And there's some that actually take it a step further and feel that, the 49ers are getting, this guy's greedy or this player's greedy, and the 49ers are having to pay this guy how much money? And there's almost some empathy on the part of the 49ers. Let me just remind everybody that while we can all see and we can all go through every dollar amount that is in the contract, the guaranteed numbers for that of Brandon Ayuk, nobody opens up the books to the San Francisco 49ers. Nobody goes through, and let me just remind everybody that Jerry Jones' franchise is worth $11 billion annually. The 49ers are $1 billion team annually in terms of their overall revenue. If you went through their books, and I'm saying God bless, everybody get theirs, right? But when you think about the television contracts as well as the streaming contracts, and then you think about all the gambling revenue, football is a good place to be if you're an owner because you are just making money hand over fist. But nobody has the opportunity through a paper or a website where we can just say, oh, look how much money they're making. Because if we did, it would put the $30 million per year for one Brandon Ayuk in a very different perspective. Now, I get it. The reason why we focus so much on Brandon Ayuk is because of the salary cap and that you have to work within certain parameters so that you can afford everybody. But this idea that the 49ers got taken to the cleaners or any sentimentality or empathy on the part of the 49ers having to spend this much money, I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind just how much revenue NFL football teams, including the San Francisco 49ers, make at the end of a year.
But also how much they're willing to spend. Again, they will be the top spenders in the NFL this upcoming season. They were at or near the top last season.
Point being is they can afford it. And I get it. Not everybody spends as much as they do, but they can afford it.
Yeah, but Jerry Jones is somebody that chooses to not spend his money. And that's where I think that the ownership group does deserve credit. They are willing to put their money where their mouths are to compete for a Super Bowl. And that's why it has been frustrating the past couple of seasons to watch this team fall short of the eventual goal, which is to win it all. because they have so much freaking talent. So much talent. And I know that there are other teams around the NFL that, and even in the NFC, that you and I both like, and I think that have gotten better and that have comparable rosters. But the Niners are the most, I don't know, like, to me, they're the most cohesive of the talented groups. They have been together for the longest amount of time. They have the chemistry, they have the experience of being in the trenches, of being in big games, of understanding what it takes to get to the Super Bowl. Maybe not win a Super Bowl, but get to a Super Bowl. And that would be the one advantage that they have over a team like Philly or a team like Detroit or a team like Green Bay, who I think a lot of people are high on this season.
Are they cohesive defensively? Like offensively, all those guys have been together for a while.
That's a good point.
Defensively, I think they were third in the NFL, I want to say, in terms of points allowed last year. Both offense and defense, they were like number 3, respectively, which is the balance you want to have. But I know what my eyes saw a year ago. They couldn't get off the field on third down. There seemed to be, especially the taste in our mouths at the end of last season against Green Bay and Detroit. Like, I know what it is that I saw. And yes, they're littered with the Fred Warners and the Boses and the Hargraves, and they got boys. But again, my eyes don't lie, and that was a team that got shredded in the postseason, and there just seems to be some holes, and I don't know if that cohesion applies to that side of the ball.
Well, I think a lot of people threw that at the foot of Steve Wilkes or the feet of Steve Wilkes. Just basically, I don't know if he was felt to me like he was kind of scapegoated. Felt to me like a lot of players didn't feel like they were being used properly instead of taking it upon themselves to just simply play better. You know, I defer more to Fred Warner's stance in which he was basically saying, like, we just got to, you know, the players play and coaches coach. We got to be better. But I do think there's a reason why Shanahan decided to split up defensive duties this year. You know, Sorensen's the coordinator, but Staley's also going to be the eyes in the sky. He's going to help schematically during the week, and then he's going to be an extra set of hands and eyes during games. You know, I don't think Shanahan trusted his defense last year, and maybe that's what he's trying to address, Devone, is he's trying to address those cohesive issues that I didn't think showed up in the Super Bowl, but to your point, they were certainly clear in the Detroit game, especially in the first half when they gave up like $170 on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't stop anybody. So I think defensively, I'm curious to see how the Niners react this season because I think they have a ton of talent. I think they avoided disaster with Leonard Floyd and Gross Matos, for example, getting hurt in the final preseason game. Floyd looks like he's going to be someone that's available come week 1. He's had a great track record of maintaining his health and being on the field and producing, even though he's north of 30. And then, honestly, I think that the defensive line to me is going to be dictated by how great of a season Nick Bosa has. And I do expect him to have a great season because he's had a full off season and he's been engaged and he's been there for voluntary workouts. He's been there for summer workouts. He's been there for all of training camp. He didn't go through what he did last off season. And when he's had full time to prepare in whatever fashion, whether he's there or not, he has been one of the top 2, if not the best edge rushers in football.
Yeah, and he's always sort of relying on at least somebody else putting some pressure on the other edge.
But he's never had any help, though. I mean, I want to say last year, the most sacks outside of Nick Bosa from that spot was like Cleveland Farrell. And he had somewhere south of 5. Like, I think Amenahu and Ebukam 2 years prior were the second sack-leading players on the Niners with like 5 sacks. I mean, it's Nick Bosa and then it's everybody else.
It'd be nice if you can get some sort of pressure from whether it's Hargrave or it's... Because I think Floyd is sort of this one-dimensional hired hand that he's not good against the run, that he's there for one reason, and that is to put pressure on the quarterback. So he's going to be in obvious throwing downs. In fact, I think he got hurt in trying to support the run. That's not what he does. That's what, big Jordan Elliott and some of these other, the Collins, Malik Collins, who they brought over from Houston, that's what those guys do. But it's nice if you can get somebody else to at least alleviate a double team and a running back that are all there to sort of chip and help against one Nick Bosa. But yeah, he's so good that if he's physically peaked and ready to go, he can defeat all of that.
But I also don't think we're going to learn how good this defense is until probably midway through the season. Number one, because it takes some time, but also because they're not going to be whole. Dre Greenlaw's not going to be on the field. Talanoa Hufanga is probably not going to be on the field. He's working his way back from a season-ending injury a year ago. So is Greenlaw, tearing his Achilles in the Super Bowl. This team is not going to be whole until midway through the year. And so I'm interested to see how they perform. I'm interested to see which group stands out because it seems like it's always been on the defensive line. And I think this year the secondary could take a step forward for the Niners. This is a team that can be better in pass coverage than they've been in years past. So I think that for me, like what I'm looking for is how quickly they come out of the gates, because go back 365 days, there were questions about what the Niners, like how fast that they would start. And they calmed all concerns by just boat racing Pittsburgh week 1 on the road and then jumping out to a 5-0 start. I don't know if they need to start 5-0, but I do believe that we're going to learn a lot about this team and where they are at, where they've been at this entire offseason based on how they play against the Jets.
I think there's a good chance that the Jets beat them soundly. I hate being that guy. And not that they're going to be a bad team this year, but I just think early on, the mojo with that Jet team for one game. And again,
RELAX.
And then when we think about the 49ers, who are still not out of the woods in terms of internal drama, because Trent Williams is still out there after what it is that we saw with Brandon Ayuk. I am a proponent.
Would you still consider that drama?
Well, he's not in camp. I mean, he's not there. And so there's still, at least, albeit the door isn't ajar it's not very wide, but it's still ajar that you may have Jalen Moore protecting the blind side of one Brock Purdy against Quinnen Williams and the boys from that of the New York Jets. The Jets have been pointing at this damn thing since they went to a Super Bowl in the late 1960s. I'm just saying, for one game to begin a season, that Aaron Rodgers' return and all of the excitement, which you just don't see in New York for the Jets, is real. And I just think that the 49ers, with all the turbulence of this offseason, could be susceptible in week 1, when you're thinking about just two teams headed in different directions, that the 49ers may not be at peak level emotionally to handle a Jet team that has been pointing at this game and this season forever, or so it appears.
See, but I also think that buildup is something that has them teetering. Like, the Jets are a team that there's a lot of expectations on them, and I think they're unnecessarily high. People are talking about the New York Jets people are talking about if they can go to the Super Bowl with a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear. That's a really high bar to set.
I don't even want to go that far. I'm just talking about I think at the end of the year, the 49ers' one-loss record will be better than that of the Jets. I'm looking at this exclusively through the vacuum of week 1. I'm just a bit afraid that the 49ers, as much as you say, oh, it's a football game and emotionally they'll be ready to go, this stuff has a weird way of rearing its head, maybe in week 1 and week 2 before you begin to sort of hit your stride. And I'm just saying there's a buzzsaw coming to town in the name of the New York Jets.
But it's not as if they're not dealing with issues. I mean, Hassan Reddick is still not present. He's still racking up fines. And that's a guy that they traded for this offseason.
Well, it's not an issue because, as we discussed, basically it's play or don't play. There is no negotiations, or there's no back and forth, or there's no scratching there's no scratching your cell phone from whatever it is that they do. There is none of this sort of, verbal darts that are being traded by both sides.
But I think if you're going to describe the Williams saga as drama, Hassan Reddick is drama. This guy literally asked for a trade after being traded to a team that he knew he was going to have to play for. And yes, the GM came out and shut it down and all the rest. And I think a lot of people are wondering if the Niners should have done that with Ayuk or maybe Williams. No, not Trent, but with Ayuk when he asked for a trade. But if you're going to say that there's still distractions on the Niners, I can use the exact same argument to say that the Jets have their own set of issues.
But I would say that, or I would counter that the anticipation.
Because I don't think either is that big of an issue to their respective teams. I don't think Trent Williams is considered a distraction by the 49ers. And the way that the Jets have handled it, I'm not sure I would consider or believe that they consider Reddick a distraction to them.
I just think the anticipation of this season for the New York Jets outweighed whatever distraction Hassan Reddick was or is for the New York Jets.
But isn't anticipation just another form of expectation? Like, they're expected to be good this year. They're expected to compete. That is something that does not generally follow the New York Jets, who are a team which I believe has the longest playoff drought in the NFL currently. I mean, this is a very hungry fan base, obviously. The Jets have a very hungry fan base. I don't know. I just feel like people have put a lot on the Jets this offseason, and they're kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Well, they're going to be better than they were last year. And last year, they were a 7-win team with probably the worst quarterback in the last decade in Zach Wilson. 7 wins. You can't, and I'm not an Aaron Rodgers guy. I think he's a tremendous football player, but just personally, I'm out on the guy.
Yeah.
But even me will give him his flowers that he can get them at least 2 or 3 more wins, which is good enough. 10 wins is getting you to the postseason.
You would think.
It's that defense, and they got serious stars from Breece Hall to Cedric Wilson to Mike Williams and a revamped offensive line. And yes, Aaron Rodgers. Look at, if Tom Brady could take you to a Super Bowl at age 40, why can't Aaron Rodgers? And I have no idea where they're going to end up when it's all said and done with, but I think in week 1, it's a bad matchup for the San Francisco 49ers.